All right, guys. Well, welcome to the HDYH Health podcast. It is Friday morning. No, it's not Friday morning. It's Thursday morning. We usually shoot on Fridays. This is why I'm used to saying that. We started doing Thursdays just recently, but I'm excited to be here because we are speaking with Jen SHULZ. She's the founder and leader of the Non-9-to-5. And I'm really excited to talk to you because, well, I'm going to get into a lot of things, but like I'm reading a book right now that's all about taking like an 80-hour work week and to working 80 hours a week to 2 hours a month. And so I know that that's probably something that we can relate as far as like what you do. But I first met you at Skyline Dinner.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And Skyline Dinners is really somewhat I guess it's pretty exclusive because you only get to go to it once, other than like maybe you get invited to like the pre-party or you can just always show up once you're part of the quote-unquote club. And you sit, and it's run by Tim and Tanner, great friends Tim and Tanner, who throw the best parties, by the way.
They do.
Here in Austin. And you get to sit and have great dinner, and you talk about a bunch of different things, but they get to introduce you. That's always my favorite part.
Yeah, I really appreciate the way that they introduce everyone.
Yeah, they take so much time and effort, and like they find things out that I'm like, how did you find that out? And so they have their ways, right? And so that's where we first met, and then I remember at the end of the night we gave you a ride.
Oh, right. That's right. I forgot about that. You gave me a ride back home.
Yeah, at that point, John and I... Well, at that point, I was still living with John. Like, we were still very much startup phase for all this that we have going on. So we were going home. We were like, well, we can... I remember I kind of had to, like, squinch into the back because we had a bunch of work stuff. Like, I think...
I remember that.
And we dropped you off, and I remember, like, maybe my girlfriend at the time. My ex-girlfriend lived downstairs from me, and that was kind of just like, oh wow, like that's crazy. But anyways, yes, that's how we met, and it's been a fun ride since then. And it's funny because it took a while before we saw each other again, and then it took another while, and then it's been less and less, and now we see you all the time. So
yes, you do.
So I'm happy about that.
Thank you.
So let's get into the non-9-to-5 first. Actually, if you want to start off with your personal story, that would be the greatest.
Yeah. So you want me to share about how I even started this crazy business called the Non-9-to-5?
Well, yeah. I mean, and like the genesis of it. Like, why did that even come to you? Like, I'm sure there was a personal struggle. So if you think about like. Our podcast is called HDYH Health, right? And so health is in all types and forms. Sometimes people hear like a business, a setting, or business type of podcast, and at first it might seem like, well, what does that have to do with health? And for us, it's like, well, it has a lot to do with health because there's business health, right?
Yes.
Like businesses can be healthy or completely not, very toxic.
Yeah.
Even as a leader, you can be a very toxic leader because like you're not sleeping well, you're not doing all these things because like there's no systems in place and you're just like burning fires instead of like making sure that systems are being well managed. Yeah. Right. So tell me about your story.
Yeah. So I so appreciate that. And first, thank you so much for having me too. So going back to 2010. Okay. That was a very, very unhealthy time for me. So in 2010, I was working as a teacher at a high-performing charter school in the South Bronx of New York City. I was waking up at 5:30 in the morning, not eating any sort of breakfast, not nourishing myself, getting in the shower, getting dressed, running out of the apartment, and taking 2 subways to the school. When I would get off the subway, it would still be dark outside. I'd get to the school, still dark outside. Then I'd just run right into my teaching day, and I usually wouldn't get home anywhere until 7, 8 o'clock at night. And I was doing that Monday through Friday. That in and of itself really started to sort of break me down. And then mentally, I was just finding myself in a space where my self-esteem was really low. So my self-esteem was really low. The chatter in my mind was calling me a loser. I didn't think I was good enough. I felt like I couldn't keep up. I would say that the school was pretty demanding, and I get it, rightfully so. It was a high-performing charter school, and we were really providing education and support that these kids really needed too. And somewhere towards the end of that year, so we're in October, so probably around this time in 2010, I started to really fall into a depression. Insomnia. So now I'm not sleeping and still doing every day over and over and over again. And just feeling terrible. Physically, emotionally, mentally drained, and not even knowing like what's really going on. Why am I so miserable? And at that same time, one of the things that was sort of coming to me was that I loved working with kids and I loved teaching, but I didn't agree with everything that the school was telling me how I had to do things, the way that things had to be done, the way that what I could and couldn't say to parents, how I could and couldn't teach the kids. So by December of that year, and if you want to talk about being really unhealthy during that time, because I was so miserable, I would go out on the weekends and really party really, really hard. And
shut it all away, right, Connor?
Yeah, like just, that weekend warrior type of thing. And, so that weekend warrior type of thing. And there was one Saturday night in the beginning of December where I went to a party. I don't even remember half the party. Got really sick when I got back home, woke up the next morning, and like my depression was on a whole other level. Just waking up, having gotten wasted and, feeling horrible. So I ended up, so it was a Sunday morning, I woke up and I remember crying and I remember talking to my dad, who actually is a business owner, but he's never said at that point, he had never said, start your own business. You should do what I did. He never said that to me, but he heard me crying on the phone. He didn't know how sick I had gotten the night before and what I actually did to myself, but I was crying about work because it was such a hard time for myself. And he said, if it's that hard, if it feels that horrible, why don't you just quit? And it was almost as if I needed that permission.
Yeah.
I needed someone to tell me it's okay to do what's best for you. And I actually walked in on that Monday morning. I gave my 2 weeks notice. And within about 2 weeks later, I left the school. And then it started me on a very slow, step-by-step journey of coming back to the person that I was meant to be, feeling healthier. And I ended up landing some independent contracting work as a teacher. So I was doing it on my own. And then that led me to starting my first business called Teacher on the Go. So I was working one-on-one with kids all over New York City. I was getting on subways and getting on buses and getting on trains. But I loved the work because I was able to take what I was so good at and do it in my own way. And wake up when it made sense for me to wake up and slow down and get myself back to a healthy space mentally, physically, emotionally. And then after I was doing that for some time, I got a really intuitive hit that said, you've been able to do this. You've been able to go from a full-time job, go from severe depression to now independent contracting work, your own business, you're feeling good about yourself. There are other people who need to learn how to do this. And
to get that permission and to be, so that's like number one, to get that permission, like it's okay. And yes, you can follow that call to start your own business and to overcome the fear and then to learn the steps and how to do it. And so the non-9-to-5 was born in officially 2013. And so that was what, like a coaching platform? Is that what it was? When
I started?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it still is. So I coach and teach women, sometimes men, how to quit their 9-to-5 jobs, stand on their own 2 feet, find and pursue their non-9-to-5 purpose. And so I take them through the whole process. I have a 6-step process. I do individual coaching and teaching work. We have an amazing community of women, and of course, men are welcome too. Amazing community of women. We do community calls that I lead. I facilitate and lead calls that either we're on a Zoom call, we have done in person pre-pandemic. So it's a really intricate process that I'm able to take people through from everything that I've experienced, from going from literally one extreme to another, having a successful self-employed business.
Well, yay, Dad, right?
Yay!
No, but the permission is, like you said, that's a huge deal. But I imagine for him, I don't know if he ever spoke to you about it, if you ever. Because running a business is well, after the fact, but like I imagine like it's not always difficult. It's not always easy to want to tell like your daughter or your son like, hey, you should just quit, because you know that running a business is also not an easy task. Mm-hmm. But at least you're doing it for yourself, right? Yeah. But like I don't know. I'm sure you've heard the quote before. It's like, hey, like everyone wants to like leave their 40-hour work week and become their boss so they can work 80 hours a week, right? Like,
so something I want to add that I think is really interesting is that when my dad gave me permission to quit my job, I had never at that point talked about starting my own business. It was like sort of maybe a possible idea, but it wasn't really this huge thing. But the funny thing is when I quit, probably about 3 weeks later, or maybe 2 weeks after that, I had started this let's just say about 3 to 4 weeks after that, I started this independent contracting work. And so there were agencies bringing students to me. And I'll never forget this. I was at my parents' house visiting them for the weekend. And I walked into the living room and I was like talking about how it was going. And I think they could really see the shift in me. My energy was different. And my dad was sitting on the couch and he goes, "Why don't you start your own tutoring business?"
Yeah. And
I was like, well, I think that's a good idea. And then that's how everything really came together.
That's cool. That's all, again, yay, Dad, right? That's interesting, right? So you talked about a 6-step process, right? It's essential. What's the first one?
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's 6 steps. They don't go in chronological order. Okay. I always make sure I tell people that because it depends on where you're at in your process. But interestingly enough, the way I have them listed is that the first step is called shift from employee to entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So basically what that's about is it's both inner and outer, meaning energetically, if you've been quote unquote trained as an employee for the majority of your life, right? You've never started your own business before. Energetically, your mind is going to be thinking like an employee. There's nothing wrong with that, but we're used to that, right? You're used to working for someone else. You're used to, you've got these meetings that you show up to. You're used to getting the paycheck once a week or once every other week. You're used to that culture. And so then it takes a retraining of the brain to start looking at things much differently. And one example is how you schedule your day. So for me, my actual work day doesn't start until approximately 11 a.m.
That's awesome.
And it's awesome, but the morning is still really structured.
Yeah.
So I've got a whole morning routine. I didn't have that when I was working for someone else. I mean, getting up at 5:30 a.m. and like running around, like what's the saying, like a chicken with your head cut off.
Yeah.
Now I'm meditating. Well, first I walk my dog, and I like going for walks with my dog. I meditate. I do warm water with lemon. I take all my supplements, which 2 of my supplements are from you guys.
Nice.
That I take every single morning, and they've made a massive difference for me. I'm going to plug that. I take Zen and Liver Love every single day. Yeah. And I've been doing that for like 6 months, I think.
They're both wonderful. I need to double up on Liver Love. I've been waking up this week. Well, there's a lot going on, and I know that's why. Mm-hmm. I've been waking up around 1:30ish, which is, when you think about circadian rhythm, that's the liver, which processes a lot of emotions during night.
Oh, I didn't know
so
that.
Like stress, or like stress, or just like frustration, and right now because we're doing the festival like in December, there's a lot of moving parts, and it's interesting because I have a morning and an evening practice, like routine and ritual that I do, and and I can usually fall asleep once I'm done like with my reading and my meditation at night. So the idea that I'm waking up at 2 is like, okay, so there's something still bigger, and it's like, well, it's not hard to figure that out right now because there's a lot going on. Because usually I just sleep through the night, 6 hours straight, 7 hours straight.
Right.
But then again, like giving yourself the time, you would never know if something's off because like there's a million other things going on. And I like the idea of waking up slowly, like still having my reading time. I don't have a dog, although if I did, I probably would walk it at first. Right?
I hope so, but she or he would need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Well, I do puppy sit sometimes, and I guess that does become part of my ritual. It's like I get up, put the coffee on like slow, because I like to do a French press, and so that way I have time to go walk the dog for like 20-30 minutes, and then come back and it's going off, right? Like the hot water. And so I do enjoy that, but I also enjoy traveling. So sometimes I think about having a girlfriend just so I can have a dog.
Why? Because she's going to bring the dog in?
Well, just so that way I can still go travel and like, hey, it's your turn.
Oh, she can watch the dog while you travel?
Or, yeah, but then she would probably want to travel with me, so then...
I don't think that's a great plug for a potential girlfriend.
Sure. But sometimes I think that I'm just being honest here.
Okay, well, hey, I'm glad you're being honest.
I'd quickly dismiss it, but
yeah,
obviously. Okay, cool. So, but that is important, right? To shift that employee to business owner mindset, because even once you've owned a business, I'm sure, well, maybe you have a process for this, and I'd love for you to talk about that, where like you catch yourself like being an employee. I know I do that sometimes. Well, I haven't thought about it that way, but I'm thinking about that now, especially with this example that I just gave you. It's like that's because I'm like doing all the things. I'm creating my own paycheck, but by doing everything, and it's fine because this new company is starting off, and do you feel like when you're starting off you're going to be all the roles?
Of course. Yeah. I think there's is the word misnomer. I think there's a misnomer in the entrepreneurial sort of world that, I'm going to start my own business and all of a sudden I'm going to have all this free time and everything's going to change. But that's not true. You can create that, but when you're first starting off, you are playing all the roles unless you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that you already have where you can just start delegating things right away and hiring people. But you've got to be willing, I think you've got to be willing to put the time in. However, though, that doesn't mean put the time in at the risk of your health and your well-being. So I have a business mentor that I've been working with now for over 8 years. And one of the things I learned pretty quickly on was, that she taught me, was how to schedule time for myself. Yeah. And that when I schedule that time for myself and that time that's away from my business, away from the day-to-day tasks and chores that I have to do. Time off, she calls it. You could time off, time away, self-time, time for myself, me time, whatever you want to call it, to keep that sacred. So she actually taught me to schedule it in my calendar, which at first was like so weird. So you want me to actually schedule, like, this is me time. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I've been doing that now for, again, like 8 years, and it's made such a difference. And then I'm able to teach my clients that as well. And actually, one of my newer clients is she's a mom who is also a teacher, and she's opening up her own school. And I just love the philosophy behind her school. And it's very difficult for her to find time. She has twins and another child. So she has 3 kids, working full time and opening this school. And so what I've shared with her is, let's just look at a week. Even if you can only find 30 minutes in that 1 week to just block off, that's me time, you start doing that.
You start there, yeah.
You do something. you do something rather than nothing. And so she did it for the first time, and she reported back, and she was like, this felt so nice to do this, to just take this time for myself, because I don't really do this. And so we just start plugging that in and plugging that in.
That's awesome. It's interesting because me time, I like to call it me time, is also my favorite time. I also have in my schedule spontaneous time.
Oh, I love that.
Which is really interesting, because it's like, well, I'm being non-spontaneous about scheduling it. But because me time usually does have like, this is what I'm doing during me time, but spontaneous time is like, oh, it's now 4:00 on Saturday. I get an hour to like be really random.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah,
you can like dance around your house, go for a walk.
And it usually does fall during my like me time anyways. But within my me time, I have a spontaneous time. It's like, well, this part's not planned. Like, let's just like go crazy and whatever happens. Talk to a stranger. Like, what are you doing? Can I join you? Like, sweet. and it's great because and that actually started when I started traveling, and I was like, well, this has to be all spontaneous because I don't know anyone there, so I'm gonna have to like figure that out. It's like, what if I bring a little bit of that back home?
Yeah.
And I think that you should try that.
I like that spontaneous time. I might steal that.
Please do.
I'm gonna steal that.
It's a fun like whatever goes kind of deal, instead of like, well, like tonight there's a little bit of me time, I'm going to a comedy.
Oh, cool.
But that's very planned, right? And it's great. I'm gonna have fun. I'm sure we're gonna laugh
I love comedy.
Yeah. Have you ever done any comedy?
I've done stand-up before.
Yeah?
Yeah, just once, about 2.5 years ago.
I mean, laughter is medicine, right?
I love it. I mean, I love stand-up so much. Anything that's connected to comedy, I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah. So this is a plug-in for Big Laugh Comedy, because they also shoot one of their podcasts in here.
Oh, cool.
But Big Laugh Comedy pretty much has a residency at what used to be, or still is, I guess, Vulcan Gas Company on 6th Street.
Okay.
And so Mondays they have a Kill Tony show, which is incredibly funny. Tuesdays and Wednesdays they usually have like someone specific. Like this past week they had Joe Rogan.
Oh, awesome.
But then Thursdays they call it a secret show, and you can buy tickets starting like Monday, but you just show up and there's like from 8 p.m. all the way to 2 a.m. it's just like one after the other, 20 to 30 minute sets per person, and tons of comics.
Wow.
Some of like, usually the majority of them are very funny, and there's some of them that have an off night, but even those are kind of funny anyways.
Yeah,
because they just laugh about themselves. But there's so many comics around there that it just feels really interesting, like that whole vibe there that's like, oh, we're here to like just have fun and laugh, and it's cool that it's on a Thursday night, because for me the weekend starts on Thursday.
Well, when I heard you say it's Thursday night and from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., in my mind I was like, if I went, I'd maybe stay till 10.
Yeah That's probably what I'm doing too, unless it's like still super fun. Like usually around 11 I'm out, because I've gone a few times on a Thursday, and the latest I've stayed is 11, but I know that it keeps going till 2. Allison, you've met Allison before? Okay, so she's a comic, and so she's part of that group as well, and so I think she's going on tonight, and that's what's going on.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's a fantastic time. You should totally check it out.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on. So currently, all right, how is your business looking? What are you most excited about?
What am I most excited about? Well, so first of all, I was super excited to come here today because I've seen this space and I was like, I want to sit by this, and I've seen this. But then from there, one thing that I'm really excited about is twice a year, once in the winter and then in the summertime, I lead our community, the women that I work with, in a community-wide training. And so our community-wide training is coming up in 1 month. It's in December. Okay. And I'm super excited because the topic for this training is how to create successful self-employment through the power of trust, vulnerability, and intuition. So I'm going to be doing a deep dive with all the women I work with during that training in terms of how to really trust yourself, what that's meant to look like, how to trust this process. So process being, I'm starting a business, I'm quitting my job. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And how to really stay with that process and trust everything that's coming along the way. And then we're going to be going deep into vulnerability, because something that I learned early on, and also from my mentor, is that vulnerability is something that's needed in this journey. One thing that I think about is within marketing, right? When we're marketing, we're simply sharing about the work we do or the product that we're selling, and we're making connections with people, and we're relating to them, and they're hearing what we're sharing, and then they're relating back to us. So if we're not vulnerable in our marketing, and really even like marketing from our heart, marketing from our gut, we're really missing a connection. There's something that we're really missing, and it's going to stunt the growth of our business and even of ourselves. And then with intuition, that's actually one of the steps in the 6-step process. It's called tap into intuition to stay the course. So intuition is something that I've been really focused on working with my own intuition, researching it, learning it from books that I've read, practicing it in real time. Because, when we're in school, when we're, elementary, middle school, high school, if we go to college, higher education, etc. I don't know, but you tell me if you've heard of this, is I don't know one class that you can take that teaches you the power of your intuition. Yeah. But I do know we're taught to use our mind logically, just, reason and logic, and that's the way to go. That's the way to make decisions. And we completely throw away or put to the side the power of actually tuning into your body, tuning into your gut, tuning into your heart, and making decisions from that space.
I have a comment and a question, maybe?
Yeah.
So, the comment being like so many times that, because it's like the trust the gut kind of deal, right? Like, but so many times we want to go through that process of like the logic and the reasoning and all that stuff, and then you're like, well, I'm going for it because I already went through the logic and the reason, and then it doesn't work out, and you're like, gosh, I just trusted my gut in the first place, right? So it's like it's speaking to us, and you do hear it. You just choose to ignore it sometimes, or you feel like maybe you're gonna find a better way to do it. Like you're gonna know better than your like innate intelligence, right? Like, do you have a follow-up comment to that?
I totally do. Yeah. Like a comment and an answer, even though it wasn't like an exact question. Sure. But I think you hit the nail on the head.
Well, because the question was gonna be like, do you have a process for that? Yeah.
Well, I don't have. Actually, you're giving me a thought. You give me actually a really good thought on some new curriculum to create in terms of teaching a step-by-step process on how to follow your intuition. I could actually break that down into steps. So thank you for that. Yes. I'm going to put that in my back pocket.
Yes. and it's recorded. So yeah. So you can go back to like, what did I
say? Yeah. Okay, so actually, even just that, what I just said about, you're giving me a good idea. My intuition when you were saying, like, do you have a process? All of a sudden, my intuition went, oh my gosh, we're meant to create a process here. Like, we're meant to actually share this. That wasn't really logical. It was intuitively like, I feel a connection here. I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my gut.
Yeah.
So what happens is that we always get gut reactions to things. As human beings, we all do. We all have the innate strength or skill, or I don't want to use the word talent, that was kind of coming to me, of intuition. Whether you're a man or a woman, whatever, we all have it. But because we're not taught...
Gift, maybe?
Gift also. Yeah. We all have that. But because we're not taught, and we're not trained at a young age just how powerful that is, it's like we don't know how to trust it. But you will always hear people say things like, I just had a feeling blank. I just had this knowing.
I knew.
Or, I don't know, I have a feeling that XYZ, ABC is going to happen. That's always your intuition talking to you. So I'll give you an example. It's actually a pretty big example, but it's the first one that's popping into my mind is that, so I'm from New York City originally, and making the decision to move to Austin was purely intuitive. There was really nothing logical about it. There was no reasoning. And the way that it happened was I was in Austin visiting a friend of mine. She lived near Town Lake, Ladybird Lake. I don't know the correct thing. Sorry.
I like Ladybird Lake.
Okay.
She's a great human
Ladybird
being.
Johnson, yeah. So I was facing the water. You know, I didn't know my directions, northeast, southwest. I'm facing the water. And I actually said to myself, should I run to the right or should I run to the left? And my intuition said, go left. So now I like to run and walk. So I was running, and there's the water on my right side. And all of a sudden I see a police officer on a Segway, and he sees me running. He goes, good morning. I was like, oh my gosh, hi, good morning. And I'm a pretty friendly person. So I was just like, that's so cool. Yeah. So now I'm running, and I see tons of people also going for runs and walking, and I see all these dogs. And I love dogs. And at the time, I didn't have a dog. I grew up with a dog, but I've never had a dog as an adult. And now I'm running on, you know, what they call in Austin the boardwalk as a New Yorker, and also living near New Jersey, the Jersey Shore. I'm sorry, that is not an actual boardwalk.
Yeah, it doesn't have casinos.
It's concrete slab, but we'll call it a boardwalk anyway. So I'm running. Then, I mean, these are all the things, and I remember these so perfectly. Then I see all these turtles in the water, and then I see the skyline, and
which has changed since.
Which has changed so much since I saw it, and I was like, that's so cool. And then literally what felt like out of nowhere, I heard this voice say to me, why don't you move to Austin? And this is as I'm running, although I wasn't running with my eyes closed because my eyes were just closed.
Sure.
But
yeah. You're still getting a meditative state. I know I do when I'm running.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
And my response back, you know, having this conversation was, I don't know. Why don't I? And that was July of, I mean, to the day, I pretty much know the date. It was like July 2nd or 3rd, 2015. I landed in Austin around September 7th or 8th, 2015. So 2 months later. And I just made it happen, and I moved.
And that's also the power of, like, you had already made a decision that you were going to take control of your life, in a sense, right? Like, you became your own owner. Because, like, if you were still an employee, it would have been different, right? Like, if you hadn't made that shift yet.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I don't know. Who knows? Sure. Maybe if I was an employee at that time and I got that hit, I would have just been like, I'm going to quit my job.
Yeah.
Although knowing, like, when I think about just myself personally, knowing the ways that I've transformed and the ways that I've grown and the ways that I've matured as a human being, as a woman, I probably wouldn't have made that decision.
Like, I don't know, why don't I probably would have had 10 other things on top of that still.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like,
here's why I shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, I have a job. I have this. I have all that. Yeah.
I could see that, yeah. Vulnerability, right? Like, that's... tell me more about that, because I have a lot of opinion on trust, because from a sales standpoint, like, trust is everything, right? And so we always like to teach... it came from one of my mentors, but I use it quite a bit. The like me, know me, trust me, pay me. It's just it always in that sense, always in that order, and never out of order. It's like people have to like you to want to get to know you, and they have to get to know you before they trust you, right? And so because they can't trust you if they don't really know you, right? And so that's just not how it happens, and that process could be really quick, but it's still like those 3 steps. And then once they trust you, then it's like, okay, well, sure, I trust you. If you're telling me this is good for me, I'll buy it, right? Like, and that's from a sales standpoint, right? Like, and there's nothing, like, you can't, like, well, I'm gonna pretend like I'm saying great things about this things even though I know it's not, because then that's not trustworthy, right? And so I have a lot of opinions on trust. It's great, but the vulnerability part is that play into to trust?
Does vulnerability connect to trust? Sure, because I mean, trust in and of itself is a vulnerable act. So to trust yourself fully and not second guess yourself that's a vulnerable act. To trust someone else, to trust a process that you're kind of like, ooh, this feels kind of right. This feels kind of good, but I don't know 100% what the outcome's going to be. That's really vulnerable because you don't know what's going to happen. But that's, again, where intuition plays a role, because if you're getting a good feeling about something, and feeling is a key word, if you're having a good feeling, if you're having a positive feeling, if you're even feeling, and this is, I like to say, there's this really cool intersection. It's a sweet spot of where fear, and let's call it fear and excitement, intersect. So if you're feeling a little bit scared about something, there's a little bit of fear, maybe a little bit apprehensive, but at the same time you're still excited, or at the same time it feels good, or at the same time there's some sort of positive energy. That's the intersection. Again, I say fear and excitement, and that intersection is a sweet spot. That intersection means you're meant to move forward. You're meant to go in that direction. What we tend to do is we don't trust our intuitive hits. We don't trust ourselves. We go outside of ourselves and we ask everyone else their opinions. We look at what we've historically done. We look at what others are doing, and then we make a decision.
Yeah. It's almost like we're living in the past. Right. Interesting. Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So let me ask you this, as far as as we're starting to wrap up here.
Yeah.
What's your favorite type of person to work with?
Oh, what a cool question. Well, I do love working with women, but again, it could be men. It's not really about someone's gender, but my favorite type of person is someone who is willing to admit, I don't know it all, and I am completely coachable. I am completely teachable. I am completely open. Because if you are saying, I want to start my own business, I want to be successfully self-employed, I'm still an employee, and I work with many people though that have already left their jobs as well. But if you're in that space, but you're also going, I know better, or I know what to do, I'm making an X. That's not a match. You have to be completely willing. And let me just plug in, going back to vulnerability, trust, and intuition, you have to be willing to be vulnerable, to take in support. You have to be willing to trust that support, that process, and follow those intuitive hits. With all that said, I love working with service providers, and I do work with people who also have products as well. But even the people who have products, there's also a service that they're providing, because the way that they're showing up with the people that they're selling the products to, you're also providing a service, and it's coming from you. I love working with people who are willing to, take in some tough love, for lack of a better way of saying it, because the work that we do at the non-9-to-5, it's high level, it's rigorous, there are requirements, but that's just a beautiful way of kind of going, okay, you want to do this thing. How serious are you? If you're serious, let me hold your hand. You take my hand. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to bring you step by step. You've got to be willing. You've got to be open. You've got to be vulnerable. You've got to be willing to trust. Those are my favorite people.
That's fantastic. I love that. And I think that a lot of people can resonate with that, which is why I like that question a lot. Where can they find you? What are you promoting right now? Obviously you said is it a retreat almost?
It's a community-wide training. Okay. So you do have to be part of the community to attend, but you can find me at the9to5.com, and it's all spelled out. I'm also on Instagram, the Non 9 to 5. I'm on Facebook, the Non 9 to 5. But I definitely want to welcome you to go to the website, because on the website, if you put in your first name and your email, you will receive a little mini PDF, little ebook that I wrote that's called The Number One Step to Staying with Your Business Mission.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for coming today. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'd love seeing you in here more often. And I can't wait to get together again. Hopefully at another one of Tim dance parties.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much.